Another season of anime is here, which means another several dozen anime premieres that threaten to bury you alive under piles of reincarnated office workers and melodramatic school kids. While spring brought a variety of titles across many different genres, summer is a decidedly fantasy-focused affair. 7 of the 15 premieres I chose to watch are fantasy and range from dungeon crawlers to wizards to Caked Up and Clueless. While none of them are outright bangers, there are still plenty of quality titles to watch this season if they fit your particular tastes. Personally, I feel like isekais and RPG-style fantasies had already gotten too saturated a couple of years ago, so this season largely exists to mock me. Even the returning series are not from the cream of the crop, the best being Shy Season 2 and Oshi no Ko, so if you wanted to sit this season out, I totally get it. But if you're willing to settle for less, you might still come away pretty happy this summer. Boy, I am underselling the hell out of this season! But before we begin, I've got to give a special anti-shout out to Ramen Akaneko, a show so threadbare it feels like it should have its own AliExpress page. This show is kinda dogshit, which is weird because it's about cats. A human gets a job brushing the cat employees of a ramen shop, and that's the entirety of the story. The art is so bad that they switch to 3D models, which are themselves pretty terrible, anytime the characters have to do anything more complicated than stand upright. And you can't even make a ramen bowl look appetizing? Go directly to jail.
Y'all ready for this? Yeah, I thought.
One of the shows that broke the animation piggy bank this season is Wistoria's Wand and Sword, a show whose animators are relishing and flaunting on seemingly every shot. Will Seifert's trying to make the grade at a magic academy full of powerful mages and sages, hoping to one day join the elitist of the elite up in a massive tower where his childhood friend sits at the very top. There's just one problem. Will can't do magic. And I mean really can't do magic. Even wands and catalysts can't help him, as teachers and students mock his persistence and make him a laughingstock of the school. These stuffy, arrogant sons of bitches think he should drop out, and they're kinda right? I mean, look, they're needlessly mean, and as we all know from t-shirts, mean people suck. But Will's aptitude is in physical fighting and evasion. Maybe he should just go to Warrior Academy and let the sorting sword put him in Fist House. But doggone it, he's gonna give it his all anyway, and try to somehow average out to a passing grade when one of the 3 criteria sits at a fat 0. And of course it's fantasy, so Will just so happens to be an extremely powerful sword wielder with unnatural strength and Look, there's no denying 2 things about this show, that it looks beautiful and that its plot and characters are bog standard. It's very typical shonen fare that got the lucky draw, so if that's what you're into, then you will probably enjoy this show. But if you want something memorable, you're probably not gonna get it here. Every character falls into comfortable genre archetypes and lack even the artificial flavoring you'd find on Pop Chips. Yeah, I guess this show is the Pop Chips of the season. You buy them and think, huh, I guess I bought those. Then you eat them and think, huh, I guess I ate those. That kinda sums up Wistoria. Much like Will in Wistoria, Nor in I Parry Everything is attempting to go way above his pay grade after his dying mother tells him to live his life the way he wants. And he wants to be an adventurer, but unfortunately he's only able to learn the most basic of skills and nothing that can actually slay monsters or protect people, with the exception of the titular parrying. And maybe there's something I don't understand about training to parry, but swinging randomly at strands of hanging swords isn't parrying. I don't know what it is, but it's not that. Maybe he should have gotten one of those baseball throwing machines, but it throws daggers or something. What separates Nor from Wisteria's protagonist is that it actually feels like his determination and persistence is authentic. Because here there actually is an academy for warriors, and thieves, and fighters, and hunters, and Nor tries out for all of them. You can actually understand and empathize with his struggle, and when Nor finds a path in life where he can help out the townspeople as the adventuring equivalent of a day laborer, it just feels right. It's charming. I want Nor to succeed. And it helps that the show is a competent production, though it does have a slideshow montage in its first episode, which makes me a little nervous about whether the production crew is meeting deadlines. But obviously, rescuing cats is not what the show is settling for, and Nor is eventually going to use his overpowered parrying ability to rise up the adventurer ranks and fight bigger and badder threats. In the first episode alone, he manages to parry a monster's axe so hard it ricochets backward and decapitates them. Still, I hope that the show doesn't follow in the footsteps of so many other wish fulfillment fantasies and instead pushes Nor to earn his way forward, because that's where the show could find its true strength. The purest comedy in this season's fantasy slate is the Osa Newbie Adventurer, in which Rick Gladiator is a former office clerk who quit his job at age 30 to become an adventurer. Since anime is often aimed at teens, that basically means he's older than a Supreme Court justice, and has absolutely no shot at even making E rank. But this particular 30-something didn't just train by swinging a wooden sword at a bunch of dangling props like our last hero. Rick's gone through an absolutely brutal gauntlet of training exercises by the world's most powerful adventuring party, Orichalcum Fist, and it's molded him into a near demigod without him realizing it. While he's worrying about passing the test, he's inadvertently destroying test equipment, surviving advanced attack magic, and leaving massive craters in the ground wherever he punches. This is the kind of comedy that will really hinge not on the premise itself, but on its cast of heroes and villains. Because as humorous as being an indestructible himbo is, that alone will carry a couple of episodes worth of gags before the udders dry, and the fan service angle does absolutely nothing for me. The premiere does get a couple of chuckles out of an early antagonist spending her duel, repeatedly tripping and becoming more dangerous by accident, but the character herself isn't particularly notable. I like Rick. He's probably the strongest protagonist, literal and non-literal, of all the fantasy shows I've watched this season, but hopefully that adventuring party of his has some fun characters as well, or else this series probably won't survive most people's 3-episode tests. Hey, come here. You looking for something cozy? Do you need to cozy? Embrace the warm blanket of banality with these next 2 shows, which show wildly different parental approaches. In Dungeon People, our protagonist Clay is not so much raised to become an adventurer by her father, so much as hydraulic pressed into the shape of an adventurer by her father, whose training is absurdly grueling. Having a normal childhood? Not on Dad's watch.
So we have to deal with him.
After he fucks off into a dungeon and never returns, Clay goes in after him and makes it far further than any other adventurer has gone before. But in the middle of a boss fight, something odd happens. A wall collapses, revealing, essentially, a secret developer room, and the boss monster immediately breaks kayfabe. At this point, the dungeon's administrator and final boss is forced to make an appearance, and asks Clay to work for her as a dungeon manager, a thing Clay didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago. Now this stoic adventurer has become essentially a franchise owner and must learn the ins and outs of dungeon upkeep and maintenance. I just mentioned in my Steam Next Fest video how much I enjoyed the demo of Goblin Cleanup, which operates under a very similar premise and has you cleaning up after previous adventurers and resetting all the traps, treasures, and props that got left behind. So the premiere of Dungeon People couldn't have come at a more serendipitous time. It has an effective, simple, and clean look to it, and the fish out of water angle should provide a few good chuckles. But ultimately, it's the laid-back educational fantasy slant that will likely carry the show from start to finish. Will it have enough material to last 12 or 13 episodes? That's gonna be its biggest test. In contrast to Clay and her dad, Dahlia's father has a more laid-back, let the kid drink out of the hose if they want to approach, which almost gets their house burnt down. But hey, whose kids haven't grabbed some magic firestones and fucked around with them until they found out? Dahlia in Bloom is one of those shows about a young woman making it on her own, like Snow White with the red hair, though we aren't actually at that part of the story in the premiere. Instead, we see Dahlia as a child learning from her father, who makes magical devices of all kinds, from automated feather dusters to fancy light projections. While Dahlia may be reincarnated, yes, it's one of those, she only seems to vaguely remember things from her life on Earth, although I'm sure she'll be recreating quite a few of our notable inventions in her new world. If only they can invent a budget! This one's looking rough right from the get-go, with drawings that look rushed and poorly composited, slideshow montages, default After Effects camera wobble placed on shots that don't need them, and poor use of CG backgrounds. They use this particular one multiple times, and if you're gonna do that, maybe, I don't know, make it less weird looking? It's a shame that shows for women often get the short end of the stick when it comes to time and money, and there's even a rumor that a North Korean animation studio was involved, which means that this show utilized forced labor conditions. Not exactly the best optics for a show about a woman blazing an independent trail. Having finally touched on an isekai, it only makes sense to bring in the VR MMO anime next. Quality Assurance in Another World is about Haga, a bug tester for an upcoming MMO who has been stuck with his friends for a year, hoping that doing their job will allow them to finally log out. which is pretty bleak, but this is a show that has no issue switching between lighthearted fare and bleak drama on a dime. The first episode in particular has an end twist that is pretty brutal, but once the show really gets underway, I imagine the real driving force will be the bug testing itself, as monsters in this world can really glitch out badly, like getting stuck on geometry. Haga's solution to defeat one of these monsters is to trap it in a stun loop and kick explosive barrels at it over and over. So, probably not the greatest MMO in the world. The animation's not incredible, but I do like the weird design style of the characters, and in an increasingly digital anime landscape, it's always nice to see a thicker, tapering ink line. I don't particularly love the 2020's obsession with thin line work and colored outlines, it just reminds me of the pencil tool in Flash, so I'll take a couple of awkward-looking drawings if they're still lovingly inked. But it's the show's odd tonal mishmash that interests me the most, because it seems like Haga's real-life friends may have slowly gone insane from being trapped, and Haga's grown to care about these NPCs as real people, which, as far as the viewer is concerned, they may as well be. I'm really wondering where this show is headed, so I will likely watch more. From the creator of Hyoka and the director of Promised Neverland comes Shoshiman, How to Become Ordinary, and that means more small-scale mysteries and a high attention to detail, this time from animation studio Lappentrack, who previously brought us Undead Murder Farce and Sarazanmai. Jogoro and Osanai are two pretty ordinary kids wanting to live their lives in peace according to a shared code of ordinary ethics that is designed to keep them from standing out. Well, too bad! This is a cartoon, fuckers! You're gonna be solving mysteries whether you like it or not. The tough thing about a series like this is that characterization is just done differently than you really want. Well, than I really want, I guess. It's less about big personalities and more about the finer details. There's a lot of quick cuts to facial expressions in the middle of sentences. There's conversations about dessert preferences. The direction in this is actually really good, even if I lack any attachment to the people on screen. There's an attention to character design where even tertiary characters have a lot of thought and care applied. It's just hard to get invested when the two leads are actively trying to avoid being interesting. But I still think this is pretty good, and I have a bit of a sweet tooth when it comes to media that takes genres in a more micro-scale, down-to-earth direction. One of the reasons I like Trails in the Sky so much is not because of the continent-spanning conspiracies that get unraveled over the course of the entire Trails timeline, but the town-by-town peacekeeping that defines the Bracer Guild and its dedication to helping others in need, no matter how small the favor is. So I think there's a good chance I will ride with the show all the way to the end. If you're looking for something absolutely ridiculous and crazy, maybe you'll like my dear friend Nokatan more than I did. Because I did not. Nokatan is a screwball comedy about a popular girl in high school with a former past as a delinquent getting tormented by the arrival of a new transfer student, a girl who is part deer and can sense all her secrets. That premise could be funny. It should be funny. The show really wants you to believe that it's very funny. It's full of sight gags, random deer skulking about, slapstick violence, and a natural odd couple. But it's just not funny. Not to me, anyway. Maybe it will be to you? A lot of foo-for-all was made over the subs for the show possibly being AI, and I can tell you after watching that they are not, and they're not the problem with the show either. The problem is one that plagues a lot of wacky comedies, which is that there's no grounding, no foundation built, no attempt to spark a connection between the viewer and the characters. I just don't care about anything that's happening, and it's all random nonsense. The slow motion bit was only mildly humorous the first time they do it, but then they do it 3 or 4 more times in the same episode. Just watch Gintama or Hari and Gu instead. Now, I'm not super into VTubers. I think I could maybe name 2 from memory, and no, Jeff Thu, I don't find this to be endearing. But that doesn't mean I can't enjoy a show about VTubing, especially when people have a hot mic moment, and that's what VTuber Legend is essentially about. Awa Yuki is a member of LiveOn's second generation of streamers, but she's flagging well behind her peers, until one night when she forgets to turn her stream off and shows off her true personality with a side of drunken raving. In contrast to her previous purity act, the audience loves this new side of her, and management outright encourages her to drink and go wild on air. If I'm being super honest, I probably won't watch another episode, largely because I don't know how long this premise can carry and I'm already not a huge fan of VTubing to begin with, but I thought this was a fun, if not 100% authentic look into the performance side of streaming. Aoyuki's lack of inhibition doesn't cause her to curse out her coworkers or spread nasty gossip, it just further accentuates her enthusiasm in support of others, and it's kinda wholesome, aside from the liver damage and horniness, but I feel like that's also pretty accurate to the whole industry from what little I've seen. If you're a fan of VTubing, this is definitely a better recommendation than that weird Kazuna AI series that didn't even have Kazuna in it and was instead a glorified NFT commercial. Maybe you prefer your YouTubers more flesh and blood. Emphasis on the blood here because Mayanaka Punch brings together a freshly awoken vampire girl who's never seen a smartphone and an exiled YouTuber who got kicked out of her own channel for getting into fistfights with the other members. Masaki's so toxic that she has multiple sock puppet accounts to attack her friends, and she can't even bring herself to do a phony apology video without losing it. But when she encounters the vampire live while trying to film a viral video at an abandoned hospital and nearly gets killed from the encounter, she proposes a lethal ultimatum. Get my channel to 1 million subscribers and I'll let you bite me. This is a show about absolute disaster people making bad decisions, and I am all for it, with great animation from PA Works and lively characters, or unlively? Masaki is a great flawed protagonist, the kind of asshole who gets cancelled and absolutely refuses to take responsibility or internalize. Live is... okay, I don't really love Live. No, stop it. I just think she's a bit too wired in this opening episode, and the dynamic between her and her Renfeld Ichiko is just not super interesting to me. But the actual interactions between Live and Masaki show a promising potential for chemistry and danger, and we haven't even been introduced to the rest of the cast yet. It's definitely worth a multi-episode commitment, if for no other reason than to see just how badly Masaki fucks things up even more. On the shorter side of anime, we've got The Magical Girl and the Evil Lieutenant by Studio Bones, celebrating their 25th anniversary. The magical girl in question is being crushed under the heels of capitalism and struggling to work 3 jobs while forgetting to eat. And the lieutenant is struggling to keep the pretense of a rivalry in motion because he's fallen really deep for her and is spending all his time buying gifts for her rather than working on his evil plans. It's a pretty simple but fun concept akin to Love After World Domination, although this show doesn't quite have the personality of that show. But at only 12 minutes per episode, I don't expect much of that anyway, and it's a Bones production so it looks great. I watched this right after Ramanaka Neko, and it's almost comically unfair how much of a quality jump it was to see this after watching this.
ブラシは人間にやらせるに限るな。
The final anime is the biggest one of the season, Shonen Jump's Elusive Samurai. Cloverworks is pulling all the stops out for this one, as it's a visual feast with gorgeous color and flowing animation. Dude, is that the Legend of Metroid? Tokiyuki is the second son of the Kamakura shogunate, and he'd like to live his days carefree in the temple and village until a weirdo shaman surprises him with some fairly dubious premonitions of war and heroism. Unfortunately for Tokiyuki, those premonitions are not only true, but right on his doorstep, as one of the shogunate's generals, Takauji, has turned traitor and slaughtered the entire army. Sawa the shaman helps Tokiyuki to escape, and it's only through his supernatural evasion and escaping that he has a chance to seek revenge. I talked about tonal mishmashes earlier in the video, and the tone of this premiere reminds me a bit of Trigun. There's ample comedy and dark despair in this show, and the early character composition does remind me of 90s shonen series quite a bit, but with a level of presentation that borders on cinematic. This show is based loosely on history, and I do mean loosely. Some of the details of Hojo Tokiyuki are contested between historians, but I think they'd all agree he doesn't have a magical dodging ability. Between Wisteria and Elusive Samurai, I'd pick this show as the big budget shonen series to watch, though being honest, I doubt this is going to be a heavyweight fight like Jujutsu Kaisen vs Demon Slayer. This is the highest rated show this season, but it's a great popcorn show, and we'll see if it has the story or character chops to live up to past jump adaptations like Dr. Stone and Chainsaw Man. Before I go, I'll touch on some series that I gave a look to but just didn't personally vibe with. Too Many Losing Heroines has a strong production from A1 Pictures, and I really like Anna Yanami as a character, but I don't really care for harem comedies, and the protagonist in particular is pretty bland. So it's weird, right? I feel like half of what I covered was pretty good, but there's not a lot this season that I actually want to keep up with. The shows that intrigue me the most are Shoshimen and Quality Assurance, and the rest, I mean, they're fine, possibly even great, but I don't have much of a connection to them. Maybe it's the genres or the settings, but I much prefer last season's mix of comedies and dramas to this season's. Hopefully there's something this season that excites you though. If you're watching any of these, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to tell me how much of a cringe coper I am for not liking the deer meme show. And as always, like and subscribe to support the channel, or check out my Patreon for additional thoughts on this season as well as past bonus content like reviews, animation, and work in progress updates. Until next time, I'll see you in another world. Wait, that sounds dark. I don't mean, I'm still gonna be alive. Unless you're a truck driver and you know something I don't?